I will leave. Perfect. Thank you, Travis. And good morning, everyone, and welcome to the annual Hamilton Labor Markets Community Consultations. My name is Khadija Hamidou, and I am your Executive Director for Workforce Planning Hamilton. And before we get started, I just wanted to acknowledge that Workforce Planning Hamilton acknowledges that the City of Hamilton is situated upon the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas. This land is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which was an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe to share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. We further acknowledge that this land is covered by the Between and Lakes Purchase. And once again, we nourish the land that we are on and we cherish the land that we are on. So I just wanted to make sure that that was once again acknowledged before we jump into the Hamilton Local Labor Market Plan Community Consultations. And our title for this year is Out of the Frying Pan and Into the Fire, as we continuously have these ongoing conversations about what our local priorities are for this year. With that being said, let's get started. So once again, the session is being recorded. I'm sure you all heard the notification that came through. It is being recorded for record keeping, quality assurance, and training purposes. We encourage an open flow discussion, and I really want to acknowledge that that is an ongoing conversation that we want to have today, is that we want it to be an open flow discussion on what the local priorities are for you. As we continuously have these conversations, we want to make sure that we are highlighting a community holistic approach on what these priorities are. So feel free to unmute yourself whenever. Let us know your thoughts and perspectives. Alternatively, please feel free to use the chat to connect with other participants. Like I said, this is very unstructured. We want to make sure that you are having a great time discussing what your priorities are for this year. And with that being said, we thank you for your participation and interest in this year's local labor market plan. Let's begin with all the fun. Okay, so Workforce Planning Hamilton. I think that we've had many different conversations with everybody here in the room today, but we just wanted to once again introduce ourselves. So I'll start again. My name is Khadija Hamidou, and I am the Executive Director of WPH.
Morning, everyone. I'm Michelle Butcher. I'm the Administrative Coordinator at Workforce Planning Hamilton, and I'll pass you over to Amy.
Thank you. So my name is Amy Jo. I'm the data analyst at Workforce Planning Hamilton. Pleasure to see everyone today, even if only virtually. I'll pass over to Travis now.
Hi, everyone. My name's Travis. I'm the Digital Media Coordinator for Workforce Planning Hamilton. It's nice to meet everyone.
Amazing. Thank you, team. And who we are at Workforce Planning Hamilton and what we do. So once again, we lead the conversation about labor market information in Hamilton, and we use the most up-to-date data to inform our community partners on the current local trends. So once again, we are a non-for-profit that is funded by the Ministry of Labor, Immigration, Training, and Skills Development. And we are Hamilton's largest job board. I always love to plug that in because we are very proud of the website that we've been able to have throughout this time, where I know that we've heard from many of you over the year on how much you've utilized this website. So we're very happy to once again be the owners of the data tool and Hamilton's largest job board. So once again, an overview of what today has to offer you. So the background on the local labor market plan. So we will be giving you an overview regarding that. The actual labor market information, which will be presented by Amy, the employer Ontario data, and then we'll be building on 2021-2022 action plans. As well as community consultations, which is why we've invited you all here today, because we want to hear from you regarding those priorities for this year and next year. So what is the local labor market plan, also known as the LLMP? We will be going back and forth between that abbreviation, so just keeping that in mind. It is a multi-year plan built around informing Hamiltonians on the state of the current labor market. So we utilize the labor market data, such as employment, wages, in-demand occupations, to paint an accurate evidence-driven picture of Hamilton's labor landscape. So we want to incorporate community stakeholders into this conversation, which is you all here today. So employers, service providers, education, institutions such as McMaster and Mohawk, to better inform our intelligence on the priorities and needs of the community. So within this baseline, the local labor market plan sets the priorities and subsequent actions needed to help address labor market needs. And with that being said, I would like to pass it over to Amy.
Thank you, Khadija. So I'll be going over the recipe for a perfect labor market plan. So how do we actually collect and distribute data through our labor market plan? Well, first we do a data analysis on the current labor market trends or conditions via the labor force survey data from Statistics Canada. Next, analysis of the labor supply through Employment Ontario client data is done, and then community consultations are done to aid in furthering our intelligence on a local labor plan. So everyone here today is a part of our community consultations. And then after that, we released the local labor market plan in early 2023. Next, I'll be going over labor market information for this year. So 2022 has been, for the most part, a delicate recovery from the Omicron variant. In 2019 to 2020, we faced a brunt of the pandemic and came out alive, but with the housing market cooling off, quantitative monetary tightening from the Bank of Canada, and overall high inflation and a rising cost of living, evidence for a recession in 2023 is starting to mount. As we just came out of the pandemic, it seems we may just be thrown into the fire of a possible recession. However, this is not set in stone. Things may change as we inch closer to the end of 2022. As we can see with the slide, there's a lot of articles from Bloomberg, RBC, as well as Reuters and the Financial Post that talk about a looming recession for Canada. So from 2019 to the present, Hamilton went through a rough period of economic turmoil as well as employment contraction due to the pandemic. Across most sectors, there were employment losses due to public health mandates, lockdowns, and the shutting down of operations for many businesses. Beginning in January of 2021, the unemployment rate for Hamilton amounted to 7.1%, which was above the rate to be considered low unemployment at 6% usually. Fast forward a couple of months, and the unemployment rate in 2021 had decreased to 5.8% at the end of the year in December. Looking at the graph on the right-hand side, so unemployment rate for Hamilton in 2021 for the CMA area, we see that the unemployment rate exhibited a downward trend in 2021, so decreasing from 7.1% to 5.8% at the end of the year. With a few bumps along the way, Hamilton has experienced a gradual recovery into 2021. In the beginning of the year, the unemployment rate amounted to 5.1%. However, as the year progressed, the unemployment rate continued to decrease. So compared to January of 2022, the unemployment rate in October declined by 0.6% to 4.9% in October. So compared to Ontario, Hamilton's unemployment rate was 0.9% lower, and compared to Canada, Hamilton's unemployment rate was 0.4% lower in October. Next, looking at employment and participation. From the beginning of the year to now, employment dipped in March, but has gradually recovered and exceeded employment in January of this year, as we can kind of see with the bar chart. Similarly with participation, the participation rate has followed a similar trend, increasing within the third quarter. So from July all the way to October, we see that line graph increase. Next, looking at unemployment by gender and by age groups. Compared to October of last year, the unemployment rate has declined for all age groups by gender and also by varying degrees. So for the working age population, so those aged 15 years and older, males saw a decline in the unemployment rate by 1.9%, and females saw a decline of 0.6% since last October. Among the core working age population, so those aged 25 years to 45 years old, females saw a slightly larger decline of 2.9% compared to males in the unemployment rate. For youth, so those aged 15 to 24 years old, had the highest unemployment rate for both men and women. Male youth experienced the largest decline in unemployment by 2.6%, as we can see. Overall, males experienced larger declines in unemployment compared to females. However, this may be attributed to there being more men in the labor force compared to women. So next, by educational attainment, compared to last October, the unemployment rate decreased in Ontario for all educational levels. We can see that through the change here. The largest decline was seen for those 0 to 8 years. The largest decline was seen for those with 0 to 8 years of education, with a decrease from the last October to this October of 4.5%. Individuals who had some high school level education had the highest unemployment rate compared to those last year. So last year, those with 0 to 8 years of education had the highest unemployment rate among other educational attainment groups. With this said, overall, those with lesser educational training had higher levels of unemployment, and we know this is not surprising, as education is one of the biggest drivers of was one of the biggest driving factors for employment. Next, if we jump into employer priorities in 2022, so in 2021, we identified what the expected top priorities were for employers in 2022. So these results came from our Employer 122 report released this year. So most employers noted that attracting new employees, so recruitment and retention, were of their top priorities at 11%. A quote from employers states, "The big problem is not hiring new staff, it's the time-consuming efforts on training at the business cost, so salaries and resources." Apart from recruitment and retention, other priorities included increasing marketing activities at 9%, increasing the online presence of their business at 9%, implementing new technologies and systems at 7%, finding and applying to federal funding programs at 6%, offering skill development opportunities for prospective employees at 6%, and better understanding available federal funding programs at 5%. So before we delve into the list of priorities, a poll will pop up for everyone to list their most pressing priorities this year. We also encourage anyone to voice additional priorities that are not in the poll in the chat. We encourage free flow discussions, so feel free to jump in whenever you would like. And we'll let this poll go for a minute or so. But again, feel free to list your priorities in the chat. They're not listed in the poll. Also, feel free to interject by unmuting yourself and letting us know what your top priorities are. So again, any free-flow conversation is always welcome. Let us know your thoughts, your perspectives. Yeah.
I actually have maybe more comment in the, it's not just this year, like very often I see the graphs when it comes to unemployment rate, and but I think it's never as true as this year, that the unemployment rate might really not show us the real picture, because we are talking about such a rise in cost of living, and you know, people finding employment really doesn't mean that they are set to live. I think through part employment and through our client, we see more and more people looking for a secondary job. So being full-time employed doesn't mean that you are above the poverty line. Actually, for most of our clients, that still means below poverty line and not being able to pay the rent and live. So even though, you know, it looks sort of good that, you know, employment rate is going up, I don't think it's really showing the real picture when it comes to, you know, living in Hamilton or the situation that our people in, even though they are full-time employed. So I don't know how, you know, we would be able to see that like on the graphs or on the chart, but I think that's a real reality, great reality for so many of our clients.
For sure. Yeah. I think just adding on to that, one way to maybe look at it is to not look at maybe unemployment in particular, but look at living wage rates. So in Hamilton, the living wage rate in 2022, which was calculated by more recently, was at, I believe, $19 per hour, which is a pretty big jump compared to last year, which was at $17. So I do agree that looking at unemployment overall does not paint the most accurate picture of what is a good living wage rate. But yeah, thank you for your insights.
No, and I would echo that sentiment as well, right? The idea of full-time, like just the employment rate. I think it really comes down to wages, and I think the living wage rate is obviously it can be a good measure. However, you know, you know, even if you look at from January to now, even the cost of living has skyrocketed, you know, and you know, that would be a really interesting question to add to you know, even a range of salary for employee
Mhm.
to understand, you know, the level of job that is here in Hamilton, because, you know, we hear from young people a lot in our work that the precarity of employment, um, the unpredictability of hours in employment. There's a lot of different things that go into that employment rate.
Yeah.
Than
Yeah.
just that, are they employed?
Mhm.
Yeah, and let's say just for 10 years back or 20 years back, working full-time in manufacturing, if you are living by yourself, it would give you ability to pay your bills and live.
Mhm.
Right now, if most of the manufacturers, due to hiring practices and placement agencies, etc., list is long, are paying, let's say average salaries 17, 18 for most of the manufacturers who are probably hiring thousands and thousands of people here in Hamilton. So if you are living on your own, working full-time in manufacturing does not secure you living in Hamilton right now. And that's a huge difference. So, despite manufacturers crying for, and needing people, having that like a vicious cycle of just getting people in and out through these agencies, I think that's the biggest change that, compared to 10 years working full-time in manufacturing at this salary, it's
Mhm.
not,
It's
you are not
definitely-
making a living.
Mhm.
Yeah, Radenka, you mentioned, individuals going into full-time, but then still needing like a second career. I would love to propose this to everybody here in the chat room. What are some of the second jobs that you are seeing individuals taking up with their full-time, career at this point? Do you see any trends within that? Because we would love to look into that further, and that could in itself be one of the priorities for next year, is to look at the second career path that individuals are going to, especially if they have their full-time roles. And I see it constantly. So I couldn't agree with you more when we started this conversation, but just seeing what are the trends that you're seeing individuals going into with their second career pathway. So feel free to unmute yourself if you do see some commonalities within that, or throw it in the chat. But yeah, it's just something that I'm actually quite curious about.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that and just say, like, I see a lot of young people, what they'll do is they'll get a second job in the same field that they're working in.
Okay.
Right? Like, so I can think of like I can think of young people, they'll work multiple jobs with like in retail, or they'll work multiple jobs in restaurant organizations, or even you look at some of the folks who are doing work in group homes and things like that, they'll work at multiple organizations to fulfill hours, right? Just to make enough money to live,
Mhm.
right? And so it's less about um wanting to explore a different career path and more about just trying to survive.
Yeah.
Mhm.
A lot of people in the chat are also mentioning like Uber Eats and those kind of driving jobs where they're more of like you can work your own hours, implement your income.
Sure. So definitely like I guess like the gig economy as well as like moonlighting is definitely becoming more prevalent in 2022.
Yeah, well, another theme that I've noticed is remote working. So if individuals are working from home, they will have multiple remote jobs so that they can do that balance from home as well. So it's a growing idea, and it's a growing concern almost to see that this is something that many individuals are picking up on. And that in itself is one of the priorities that we can look into. So thank you so much for sharing and participating in your thoughts.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I'm just going to end the poll results really quickly and I'll continue with the presentation. But again, thank you everyone for your insights and for your inputs. Extremely helpful and always welcome. So I'm just going to share the results for everyone. As we hopefully can see, attracting new employees is still at a top list. So 70% of respondents still said recruitment and retention are really key priorities going into 2023. Yeah. Okay.
offering skill development opportunities is quite high as well.
Mhm, mhm.
Okay. Right, Amy?
Amazing. So in 2021, Workforce Planning Hamilton switched from visibility jobs to our own job board to better capture data on job postings, wages, as well as employer data. So this chart looks at the number of job postings, so the bar charts, and the number of companies hiring, so the line graph, from January of this year to September of this year. So by the numbers, job postings in Hamilton peaked in May with over 15,000 job postings, but still compared to the beginning of the year, job postings have continued to increase into the ending of the year. So for Employer 1 2022, many employers in Hamilton identified hard to fill jobs to include bartenders, cashiers, construction laborers, cooks, customer service representatives, as well as many other occupations. So from these hard to fill jobs, a lot of them were also identified to be occupations within the skilled trades, such as automotive technicians, bakers, as well as carpenters. The mind cloud graphic on the right-hand side also depicts all the highlighted hard to fill jobs from our survey, as well as those that trickle down into skilled trades. So kind of take a look at this for a few seconds. And I also have another question for the audience. So as employers, do you still see these occupations being the most in demand now? Alternatively, what are some of the hard to fill jobs you have encountered this year? So feel free to jump in, cut me off, let us know in the chat as well.
I can just say, speaking from experience, that almost any restaurant I go to, there's a sign, fast food or sit down or whatever, that says hiring many roles. So I think the restaurant business seems, just from my views, to still be struggling to fill their positions, because of all the people who probably left during the lockdowns and found some sort of other form of employment that was maybe more secure with the unknowing economy.
Thank you, Michelle. And yeah, and for sure, right? I mean, restaurant services, I know previously we talked about automation and restaurant services in different sectors more broadly to fill labor vacancies. And also, everyone, feel free to just jump in, even if it's on a broad sector or broad industry.
Yeah, I would love to hear from individuals who are organizations who work with individuals with disabilities. Like, what are some of the dire need, hard to fill jobs within that industry, maybe?
Yeah, Pat works with people with disability. We do have a 5-star. It's a program that is teaching skills necessary to work in a restaurant industry for people living with disability. And I don't directly work with that program, but from my colleagues, it's still not as easy as it should be to find placements for our participants. So aside from all of these troubles, there's still lots of stigma and lots of or lack of room to move around and accommodate for many small employers. Again, the costs of material, costs of everything. So it gives, does not provide the employer still with room to move and accommodate and make necessary changes. So partly is that. Another part is, of course, closed-mindedness and lack of understanding what it takes to accommodate or what the disability is. So even in that field that you would think, or we thought, because we saw the same, signs everywhere, we need. But again, once the, rubber hits the road, again, it's not as easy at all to place somebody living with disability, even in that industry. And then it can just tell you how hard is it than in any other. Manufacturing is extremely rigid, as you know. Negotiating, maybe in my so many years of experience, there were few instances where few manufacturers were able to have that discussion, flexibility, resources, et cetera, to do that. But it's very, very hard. And then retail, as well, not many of them. There are some, even with manufacturing, I know that Amazon is trying and so many other are trying. It would necessity now, or the situation that we are right in, change anything or move forward? Maybe, because usually it's necessity that pushes people to change and adapt and all of that. But I would say, I don't know, there are a few other colleagues that work with me at PAT, but I didn't see huge movements forward when it comes to employing or being willing to accommodate people with disability that I know of.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really insightful.
Hi, Khadija. I do want to share some trends that our employment counseling team has witnessed or seen, especially with individuals who they do identify as people with disabilities, but they may not have applied for ODSP, they may not have access to other services, that they may see themselves get into a job, but then they would not be able to retain the job. They're not able to retain the job. The range could be from, I was too slow, I do have an injury, I had surgery, I couldn't continue with the labor heavy piece. So individuals are attempting to be part of the labor market, but they are also experiencing their own barriers. They are attempting to manage without asking for accommodation, but they are not able to retain a job because they're not asking for accommodation. They are hesitant to ask for accommodations. They're hesitant to disclose barriers.
Okay, that is actually very insightful, because life changes happen all the time when people are entering the labor market, but not having an employer who is ready to see those changes happening as they go. And then also, as you mentioned, Mona, like being able to accommodate those changes as life circumstances happen, that's definitely a barrier in within itself. So I've written that down. Thank you so much, Mona.
Yeah.
Amazing. So I'll pass it back over to Amy.
Oh, good. Thank you, Khadija. So next, if we look at top hiring industries, so from our job board, job postings under retail and household trade made up the largest proportion of job postings in 2022, with over 8,000 postings. Apart from retail and wholesale trade, industries such as admin and support, healthcare, accommodation and food services, and finance were of the top hiring industries in 2022. We can take a minute to kind of look at the top hiring industries. But again, as we can kind of see, retail trade definitely dominates the rest of the top 10. Okay, so next, if you look at top in-demand occupations, instead of top hiring industries, we can see that 5 out of the top in-demand occupations in 2022 were of the broad occupational group of sales and service, which is identified as a first digit NOC code of 6. So if we look at the table, we can see that retail salespersons, customer service representatives, cooks, food counter attendants, as well as light duty cleaners were all of the sales and service occupational group. With this said, the sales and service occupational group is not just exclusive to retail trade, per the top hiring industries as we've seen above, although there exists a lot of intersection between the two. A lot of these occupations are also highlighted as hard to fill from employer one. So these include cooks, food counter attendants, managers, as well as transport truck drivers. For many of these occupations are also entry level, so requiring no post-secondary training or education. Moreover, as identified in our employer one, occupations in the trades continue to be in demand in 2022, with material handlers as the second most in demand, as well as transport truck drivers as the 5th most in demand. Next, it's apparent that there exists a labor shortage in the sales and services sector, as well as in the skilled trades for Hamilton. However, shortages in the sales and service sector were not always the case. So shortages in the sectors have continued to increase and persist since the COVID-19 pandemic. So from our 2017 labor market plan, job postings for sales and service occupations exceeded the number of job postings at a sample of the labor market in 2016. But the pandemic caused a lot of labor market disruptions in 2019 as well as 2020 that changed this. With that said, almost all sectors saw declines in employment as public health mandates and lockdowns made it difficult for client-facing sectors to operate normally. So sales and service faced the brunt of this in 2019 to 2020, losing 7.1% of total employment from 2019 to 2020, as depicted on the right-hand side on figure 5. In 2021, employment in sales and service recovered moderately from 2020 to 2021, but still, as we can still see, it still saw a 2-year decline of 4.1% from 2019 to 2021, as per figure 5. The trade similarly saw a 1-year decline of 19.2% employment from 2020 to 2021, as well as a 2-year decline of 14.4% in employment from 2019 to 2021. From figure 5, we can see that although most occupational groups saw 1-year growth, the vast majority also still saw 2-year declines from 2019 to 2021. So with this said, labor shortages are not just contained to Hamilton. I think this is pretty much a no-brainer, but coupled with many of the in-demand occupations being skilled C-level jobs or entry-level occupations, the pandemic has definitely accentuated labor shortages in the sales and services sector, the skilled trades, as for other sectors that employ a large proportion of those in entry-level positions. And this is also highlighted through our news articles. So labor shortages for small businesses, for those that are restaurant workers, and for those in construction as well. As we can kind of see, there's also a trend for Canada hiring more immigrants to fill these entry-level positions. So next, jumping into employer concerns in 2022. So similar to employer priorities, our Employer 2022 survey captured insights into the top employer concerns going into 2022. So the top employer concern was the impact of inflation on their business and customers at 13%. So a quote from an employer: "There is no financial support for personal services. We are struggling. Expenses keep going up, yet we cannot even come close to the profits we saw pre-pandemic." Other concerns included the mental and physical well-being of employers at 12%, the inability to predict a short-term business environment at 10%, and the mental and physical well-being of employers at 9%. So again, before we delve into the list of concerns, a poll will pop up for everyone to list their top most pressing concerns as well. Again, feel free to jump in, interject, let us know your concerns going into 2023, as well as feel free to let us know through the chat as well. So I'll pause here for a brief moment for anybody to jump in. Feel free to voice your concerns. Again, we encourage a free flow discussion, so please don't hesitate to let us know.
I think we can also see, just based off of the conversation we had previously about, some of the accommodations, right? Going back to mental and physical well-being of employees is obviously a concern as we continue to see that there's a lack of accommodations being provided to employees, as well as predicting, what's next, especially after the 2020 to 2022 like pandemic, and still going into this recovery stages where, we at this point, I think it's a reality that we just don't know what's coming next, if there is something coming next. So I think it's all of these can be highlighted as a concern in itself and has really good backing as to why these are concerns. That is not my dog.
It's mine.
Okay, we'll just let the poll go on for a few more seconds. But again, let us know. Also, you guys can also piggyback off of our previous conversations. Again, anything that comes to mind, we encourage free flow discussions, and we are very open here.
And feel free to drop it in the chats as well. I don't know if I can't see the chat, Michelle, but if there's any comments, let us know.
I can say right now that inflation is definitely still at the top of their concerns, which is not surprising given the state of 2022 right now.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I'm gonna end the poll here, and then I'll display the results. Yeah, here we go. So if we take a look at the poll, we can see that the impact of inflation is still one of the most pressing concerns at 84%. Below that is mental and physical well-being of employees at 72%, as well as the inability to protect the short-term business environment at 25% as the top three, which is definitely echoed again our 2021 results as well, as we can see from the slide. Let's stop sharing the poll and we can move on to presentation. Again, thank you everyone for your insights. Always appreciated. Always appreciated. But so next we'll look into some inflation trends. So very fitting. So the chart depicts CPI inflation from June 2020 to September of 2022. So this year. So from the pandemic to now, inflation has increased drastically. On October 26, 2020, on October 26th of this year, the Bank of Canada adjusted the target for the overnight rate from 3.25% to 3.75%, which is a hike of 0.5% in total CPI inflation. So quantitative tightening in 2022 has led to slight gradual drops in total CPI inflation, decreasing from 8.1% in June to 6.9% in September. However, most of this decline can be attributed to the declines in gasoline prices, which is then displayed on the next slide. So here we have CPI by product group. So for Canada, we can see looking deeper into CPI for Canada, we can see inflation has increased since last year for all core product groups. So this includes food, shelter, as well as energy. And the CPI for food increased by 10.1%, for shelter increased by 6.9%, for transportation increased by 9.5%, and for energy it has increased by 16.2%, which is quite an increase compared to last October. Next, so if we look at inflation concerns in Ontario for businesses, all types of businesses in Ontario face inflation concerns in 2022. So those that, from Statistics Canada's survey on Canadian business conditions, 53% of employers expected inflation to be a bigger issue when discussing wages for employees over the next 12 months in the second quarter. And we can see, which is depicted by the pie chart in dark blue, 53% said yes, inflation is going to be a big concern when discussing wages. And then we can see that in teal, no, 28% said it wasn't going to be a big concern. And then in green, we can see that 90% said it was an unknown concern of them, unknown concern of theirs. Next, if you look at inflation at a more granular level for businesses, so broken down by type of industry, business size, as well as business age. All types of businesses in Ontario face inflation concerns. So those that operated in food and accommodation services reported the highest concern of inflation, affecting wage increases at 84%. Second was manufacturing at 80.8%. And then third were the arts at 69%. Fourth was admin and support services at 67.4%. And fifth were administrative services at 58.8%. Something to keep in mind is that these industries also employ a large proportion of entry-level workers, hence those that may employ at or just above the minimum wage. Next, by business size, those with 20 to 99 employees reported inflation as a bigger concern when discussing wages at 70.8% among other business sizes. And for businesses that were more than 20 years old, they reported the highest concern of inflation affecting employee wages at 57.2%. So I just want to also put another question out there for employers. So do you think that inflation has affected your business? And if so, by what magnitude? Again, feel free to let us know through the chat or through unmuting yourself and letting us know. Again,
so I think, yeah, I think I want to just quickly speak to that Hamilton ER piece, right? And the $22 and right. And just that kind of speaks to that conversation we were having earlier about, so $19 an hour is your living wage, but then now you look at inflation even since the beginning of the year and that kind of piece there, right? So Anyways, I just thought that that was very interesting
Yeah, for sure.
as that slide came up.
For sure. Well, that's it. I'll go into wages because I think wages is definitely a hot topic this year. So now that we discussed the impacts of inflation on wages, how have wages fared in 2022? As we can kind of see already, for the most part, wages saw good growth compared to last year. In Canada, average hourly wages grew by $1.20. Similarly, in Ontario, wages grew by $1.10. And for the Hamilton Economic Region, hourly wages grew by $1.35. So compared to other geographies, the Hamilton Economic Region saw the largest growth in average hourly wages, with an increase of $1.35 to $22.35 overall. With a tight labor market in 2022, increasing wages has become essential for businesses to stay competitive in the labor market. However, with rising inflation and its impact on the viability of wage increases for employers, wage increases may become more difficult going into 2023. And that brings me to my next question. So as a question for the audience, do you foresee wage increases becoming more difficult going into 2023? Do you think this is not going to be an issue for your business? Please let us know either through the chat or through unmuting yourself and letting us know.
Okay, let me tell you something that happened last few months. Like everyone else here, we work with some employers and helping them find people. So there's one manufacturer that it's a mid-size manufacturer and has a plan that is very close to the new Amazon plan. Okay. Mm-hmm. So when the new Amazon plan, they lost a huge number of their employees because Amazon at that time was paying 18 and they were paying 16. So they had almost 30% of their employees that were quite stable employees left for Amazon. Maybe a month after that, they called me and say we increased our wage to 70. And again, we were not able to find too many people. Recently, they called me to tell me that they matched Amazon's $18 per hour. So if this is the indication of what's going on in that like an employer world, where they are now pushed to increase the salaries because they cannot find people, is that a good thing, bad thing? How much can that manufacturer, let's say, try to top up or go along together with Amazon, which is like a giant and probably can absorb way easier a salary increase. So I don't know, but for me it was very, very interesting because that was the first time that I was in the situation watching it between two of my employers that are trying to not to lose more people, spiking up. And again, kudos. I am all for it because my clients found the job, or I know I employed clients with that smaller manufacturer, but I'm just thinking on the big scale, how much it's going to be impacting even smaller manufacturers or smaller businesses who can absorb the costs of inflation, who cannot. So would just the giants survive again, and the small ones are just, going to be falling through the cracks even more with the inflation, with everything that's going on? Because we've seen already like small businesses in Hamilton not being able to pull through the pandemic, and many of them are probably not going to be able to pull through the inflation. So it's just
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
Did they provide any feedback if any of their employees came back when they matched the same rates? Because I know previously to the pandemic, some employers really were focusing on a retention pieces like the workplace culture. So although the money is now the same, do they prefer to stay at Amazon or do they prefer to go back to where maybe they were more stabilized before? Did they give you any insight into if anybody went back?
No. They didn't really.
Interesting, yeah.
That's very interesting. Thank you.
I think there was another hand up as well.
Yeah, there's a hand up, Christine.
So from the WISE perspective, we work with employers currently on our little job board, not the largest job board in Hamilton, but still pretty robust. we have, just employers contacting us, over 200 positions available. And one of the things that we're seeing from employers is exactly the opposite. We talk to them about, possibly increasing their wages or being more competitive. And many of them tell us that they're not willing to do that. And when we look at history past in other, industrial revelations where, the labor market or job skills were needed highly to make businesses happen, or to be able to do their work, that's what happened. Employers raised wages, and those people that raised wages got the employees and the workforce they needed. But for some reason right now, employers aren't really willing to do that or cut into their potential profits in order to see their workforce go. And I'm not sure why that is. And we've taken some time to talk to some employers to see, like, so what's the impact on this? You don't raise your wages, you're not getting the workforce. But then when we suggest other labor pools, as we know, employment transformation has seen us look at other people that they wouldn't typically look at to consider bringing on in their workforce, but they're not open to doing that either. So it's kind of like, who's creating this chaos in the sense of the mentality of the employer, and also, what they think they can get. And it takes a long time for us to convince, or for them to realize what they need to do to realize the labor market. And we also know that this situation with shortage of workers, it's not just because of COVID, it's been brewing for a long, long while. And I'm not sure, my comment earlier around bringing in newcomers to fit these positions, I think there's a mismatch there, and I think we're remiss to think that that's going to solve the problem, because the skills aren't there, and the interest and the desire isn't there from the newcomers to fill those types of positions either. So just some interesting observations from our personal experience in the community with employers. Same employers, same type of employers. So construction, retail, sales, service, healthcare, but no interest in raising wages. And if they are going to provide increases, it's around 1 or 2%, nothing further than that.
Awesome, thank you,
Christine. Yeah, I think this is something that we highlight in our Employer One survey as well, is that there seems to be a mismatch often from employers and employees. Like, they're saying they're not going to raise their wages, but they're also not doing anything within their business to attract new people or changing their ways. So it's kind of like, well, what do you expect to change if you're not going to change anything? Adam, I think you had your hand up next.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. Morning, everybody. Adam Durant, City of Hamilton Economic Development Office. I just wanted to add on to the last comment a little bit, only because I was on a webinar yesterday with CoStar, and that's a real estate company that does a lot of economic modeling at the national, international level. And one of the observations that came out of that was that this idea of wage pressure being realized in the labor market and driving a hot labor market, that wasn't really occurring, not just in Hamilton, but at a national level. The broader trend that they were seeing through their economic analysis, and it was backed up by work that Oxford Economics had done as well too, was that unlike in previous economic slowdowns where we did start to see wage rates climbing in a meaningful way, that's not really what's happening right now. So they use that as a piece of evidence among many other that I won't bother to go into right now, to say that what is coming for us down the road, the probable recession, whether it's a short one, a long one, a deep one, a shallow one, it's going to be a little bit different than what we've seen previously. And we probably don't want to look back to 1991 or 2008 and say, right, we know what's coming. We've been through this before. This one seemingly is following its own path and doing some of its own trends that are going to make things a little different. And part of that is the upward pressure on wages being realized. The pressure may be there from the workforce, but it's not being realized or captured in any way at a macro level. So just wanted to add on to that, to add a bit of context that this is not going to be a Hamilton problem based on what the latest economic trends are. This is a national level issue based on those trends.
Thank you, Adam. That was really insightful. So just to be cognizant of time, we will be continuing all of our presentation, but again, we will have a portion of the presentation where you guys can have your say of like current concerns and priorities. But again, we'll continue on for the most part. But again, thank you everyone for your comments.
Just quickly, Anna, I see you have your hand up. If you want to put your question in the chat, we can get to it once the slideshow is done, or your thoughts, or we can come back to it at the end, but we will not just skip over you. Thanks.
We see you, Anna. Amazing.
So next, moving on to Employment Ontario data. So next we'll take a look at the labor supply. So each fiscal year, a report on Employment Ontario clients is provided to the local boards to assess the impact of Employment Ontario programs. So for Hamilton, there are 8 service providers funded by EO or Employment Ontario. We'll be using EO as for the abbreviation, with a total of 10 locations spread across the city. So this year's data covers the 2021 to 2022 fiscal year, so from April 2021 to March of 2022, and covers the following programs: the Canada-Ontario Job Grant, Employment Services, Literacy and Basic Skills, Ontario Employment Assistance Services, Second Career or Better Jobs Ontario, and a Youth Job Connection, as well as apprenticeships. So the table below shows the 3-year change from during the pandemic to post-pandemic and EO client numbers. So the last column shows the 1-year change from 2021 fiscal year to 2022 fiscal year. So most programs saw increases in number of EO clients, with the exception of literacy and basic skills, where some programs were not reported due to cuts in funding or changes in the program. So next, we look at employment services, and particularly, so specific data on ES clients from Hamilton are not yet available due to Hamilton being included in the service system management catchment areas. Instead, we will focus on the Western region. So in 2022, there were a total of 22,292 assisted service clients and over 100,000 unassisted clients. So those in a core working age group, so those aged 25 to 44 years old, made up majority of employment service clients. Over 15,000 clients, or 68% of total assisted service clients, found employment at the end of their program, whereas others went into education at 13%. So employment outcomes at exit is also further displayed by the pie chart on the right-hand side. Firm reported 2,663 clients. 19% found employment in manufacturing, whereas 14% found employment in the retail trade and 12% found employment in healthcare. So next, moving on to the Canada-Ontario Job Grant. So overall, during the 2022 fiscal year, clients increased by 47.8% and recovered to the enrollment levels seen in 2019, so post-pandemic. However, enrollment was still significantly below pre-pandemic levels in 2018. Employers increased by 16.7%, and by age groups and by gender. The table on the right-hand side depicts the changes by gender. So as we can see, all age groups saw increases in client enrollment this year, as well as men made up a majority of client enrollment at 71%. So next, on to literacy and basic skills, or LBS. During the 2022 fiscal year, Hamilton saw a decline of 4.4% in LBS clients, but again, compared to pre-pandemic times, LBS clients still increased by 21.7% from 2019 to now. By age groups and by educational attainment, learners in the youth category, so those aged 15 to 24 years old, saw a large decline of 30.2% enrollment compared to last year. On the other hand, senior learners increased. So declines in enrollment were mainly attributed to the reference period of Ontario data. So as we know, the data captures from April 2021 to March 2022. So this also captures data for client enrollment during COVID-19 as well. Sarah, I see your hand up, so feel free to interject.
Yes, morning, everyone. Yeah, I just wanted to add, there is some complexity with the literacy and basic skills data year over year, just due to some of the regression of data. But yeah, I just wanted to make a note just for this conversation that many of the work the learners in literacy and basic skills programs are working, whether that be full-time or part-time while in training. And I thought that was an interesting thing to bring up, as it will kind of probably flow through some of the other pieces that we'll talk about this morning. So just wanted to add that we have around 30% of learners kind of year over year that are engaged in the labor market already.
For sure, thank you. Yeah, so moving on to second career. So in the 2022 fiscal year, the number of second career clients increased by 14.5% since last year. And client enrollment dipped in 2019 due to the pandemic, but has since returned to pre-pandemic levels of 197 clients in 2022, similar to the enrollment levels seen in 2019. And we look at a pie chart on the right-hand side, we can see the unemployment status of clients prior to enrollment in the program. Although around 61% were unknown, many were also unemployed for less than 3 months, 3 to 6 months, 6 to 12 months, and also more than a year. Next, moving into apprenticeships. So in the 2022 fiscal year, apprenticeship registration increased by 25%, and the number of active apprentices increased by 3.6%. Compared to pre-pandemic times, the number of active apprentices recovered to the enrollment levels seen in 2018, so pre-pandemic, but new registrations continue to struggle in 2022 to meet the enrollment seen pre-pandemic. Next, the trade that reported the most registrations were electricians and construction and maintenance, 148 new registrants. So similar to last year, electricians had the most registrations among the reported trades. Overall, there are new registrants for 18 different trades in the Hamilton region, and that's also depicted on the bar chart at the very bottom. We can see in second was industrial mechanic, millwrights, plumbers, general carpenters, as well as automotive service technicians. So now we'll take a brief intermission for any questions. Feel free to jump in again, brief discussion, let us know your perspectives, your thoughts. Any program changes that could affect a client enrollment, let us know. And if not, we'll be going into the 2021 action plan. So I'll now pass it over to Michelle to do that section of the presentation.
Great, thanks, Amy. So this is kind of like the meat and the potatoes of the presentation. So every year we do this community consultation, and what it does is it creates an action plan for our team to go back and kind of form our next business plan and the projects that we're going to work on. So this is where your feedback really comes in handy. So each year we build and reconsider the priorities that the community put forward so that the work we do is actually meaningful to the community and not just all this work that we put into all the research and data and surveys and pestering employers all year for something that's not going to be useful. So as much detail as you guys can give is great. So let's take a look at our action plan. So how we are going to do this is these are our priorities that we took into this year. So we were identifying the critical labor market trends. This is kind of something we always do. It's kind of the core of our work, but there was a key focus on the post-pandemic and this ever-changing economy, as we didn't know if we were going into more lockdowns or what was happening. So for us at Workforce Planning Hamilton, the last few years have been a bit touch and go because the projects we had planned didn't make sense to do in a lockdown. So that's something key that we stick to, working with the trends and the evolving economy. We aim to understand the competencies needed and available currently now and in the future. We wanted to highlight and reduce the barriers for youth entering the labor market. So if anybody attended our youth roundtable, you will know that that's something we worked on. Encourage and promote the best practices in recruitment and retention to small to medium employers. Highlight, analyze, and mitigate the mental health effects on workers and the unemployed. So what the point of today is to get some key priorities for next year that will build our work plan for next year. So to do this, thank you. Travis is going to share a link in the chat, and it's a mentee survey. So what it is it allows you to type in your priorities that you would like to share to us. I believe it is anonymous, so we won't know who's saying what. And it kind of creates a word map. So we will share that as the presentation goes on so that you can see what other people's priorities are as we carry on this discussion. And we will take this back as a team and delve into if there's some trends happening, I'm sure there'll be some overlap of people's priorities for 2023. And so, for example, if you need some ideas, like mental health is always a key one for employers. There's always something about the skilled trades that there's a huge skilled trade shortage in Hamilton. Now with the ever-changing inflation and cost of living and all of that, that directly relates to the work we do as well. So there we go. As people fill this in, it will pop up, so you can get an idea of what other people are also voicing as their priorities. So thank you for filling that in. It's starting to fill in, and that is great. And there'll be time at the end also for Khadijah's going to just talk a little bit about some more detail of our projects and our priorities from last year, and then we will open the floor to discuss and questions. And Anna, we will get back to you. We're not forgetting you, and we'll just carry on from here. So thanks, everyone. Khadijah?
Thank you, Michelle. So for the next few minutes, just consider me your background noise and your background music as you continue to fill these out and share your thoughts. We just wanted to highlight what were some of the priorities from this year that was highlighted at last year's local labor market plan consultation. So this is, like, as Michelle and Amy has mentioned, this is an ongoing conversation that we're having with the community members, with institutions, with our partners. So some of the proposed action plans for 2022 going into 2023 was, once again, looking at data management and strategies that revolve around that. So we have a lot of different ways of doing data management, which is from our website to our monthly labor market snapshots. One of the big things that we heard throughout the year was providing more data, and it's always an interesting conversation to have as we try to provide as much data as possible. But one thing that we really done a great job on this year is moving from quarterly snapshots to monthly snapshots. So that usually release every month for community members to take a look at what is currently happening from a month-to-month basis. So definitely take a look at our website for those snapshots. We do post it on LinkedIn and our social media platforms as well. Another proposed action plan was the continuation of our partnership with economic development through the Employer One survey. So this has been something that we've been very proud of over the last few years. And as we continue to see it grow, even last year during the pandemic, we actually released the survey during the same day that we went back into lockdown, and we still saw such an amount of survey completions through that conversation. So, within the Hamilton region, we're very Hamilton proud in that moment, because we saw that, it's definitely an ongoing conversation that we are having with community partners of ours, with employers, just to see what is currently the trends at this point. Another proposed plan was to understand, the priorities reflected the ever-evolving skills requirements for 2021's post-pandemic economy. So much of that was focused on the potential damage increase of automation that would continue to have a certain occupation connected to it. So once again, going into 2023, looking at the apprenticeship toolkit that we have with our community partners of Mohawk College, as well as SOY, so Support Ontario Youth. So that's something that's going to be released in the next few months, and we will have a feedback opportunity to take a look at the draft of the toolkit, hear from you all, anybody that's connected to the apprenticeship field, and hear about how we can really make that a seamless process. And once again, of course, we have the release of our 2023 Employee One action plan as well. So the Employee One toolkit and survey would be really able to get a better sense of, you know, the Employer One survey, but then also flipping the script a little bit and looking into, you know, having a larger conversation with employees about what they're currently facing in this moment. And I'm sure I cannot see you all as you fill in the blanks here. And I'm sure that you are doing an amazing job at that. So as we continue to have these conversations, I would love to see, hopefully I'm giving you more and more ideas on, how to reflect on the top priorities for 2023. So another conversation that we had was about youth. So as you're aware, we started the Hamilton Youth Workforce page where we were posting a lot of job opportunities that were related to youth. So we knew that there was barriers of unemployment and mental health struggles of youth during the pandemic, and we wanted to continue to support any type of strategic planning that went along with that. So we, started off with the roundtable conversations this year, and as we continue to have these one-on-one interviews with youth leaders and youth as a whole, I think this is a really great conversation to continue with as we see that youth are our future, and we want to make sure that we are giving them sustainable employment throughout this time as well. Recruitment and retention was a huge conversation as well, and it's an ongoing a priority of ours as we want to focus on two broad categories of recruitment and retention for new workers and training and career laddering for job seekers. So one of the proposed action plans for this year was connecting with Hamilton's small to medium skilled trades employers, as well as an employer engagement project. So reaching out to employers to see what their needs were, from the Employer One survey, but then on top of that, giving them a better understanding of what the current projects and what the current programs that were happening in our community, so that we can connect employers to you all about the current needs in our community as a whole.
Khadija, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm just thinking, and that's probably a trend in other service providers are seeing. The job retention is actually becoming more and more issue because now jobs are available, but people are not staying for whatever reason, and especially when it comes, some of our clients living with disability, that's even more prominent because they apply for the job, they take the person, but again, that client, as Mona says, for whatever reason, either is not able to keep up the job or there's no accommodation or whatever. So is there a way somehow to find out how big issue is that? How, like from the ones who are hiring, let's say the big employers, what is the turnover, how that works? Because if they are creating, I don't know, 5 jobs, how many people do they really hire for these 5 jobs? How many stay and how many times they have to refill them?
Absolutely.
I know that's a huge issue in some. I'm 100% sure that retail is struggling with that a lot, manufacturing and all of that. But I really would love to see how big that really is.
That issue is.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's something that we're continuously looking into through our various forms of surveys in itself is, what is the reason behind this large increase in retention? And we starting to see that conversation as we continue to reach out to employers, reach out to EO providers, reach out to everybody in this room, to be honest, about, what is the ongoing trend. And it's the wage increase or the lack of wage increase, going back into the conversation about sustainability and interest as a whole. We're seeing that individuals are going into these these career pathways, but then not wanting to continue because of things that we've listed, even within the conversation with you, Radenka, about accommodations and services and needs. So it's an ongoing conversation, and as we continue to release these Employer One surveys, we are seeing an ongoing trend in itself. I think Christine mentioned it's a job seeker market, so some jump because they can, exactly, right? So there is an opportunity, and we do see it in itself that there is an opportunity for an ongoing, search. Right. I think it almost becomes like an addiction, right? Where you're constantly looking for new opportunities, which is great in itself because that means that there's a variety of skills out there. But at the same time, it does impact the retention proportion as well. I am back on our page and I'm looking at all these priorities that's been listed. So I just want to thank you all for that participation in itself. I'm just going back to our last priority from last year that was mentioned, which was, of course, mental health and employment. And as we see the priorities for this year, it's an ongoing conversation. So last year, this priority was created from its prevalence during our previous consultations to address the detrimental effect of the pandemic and how workers and mental health well-being all are interconnected in its sense. So mental health and employment being interconnected, those cross paths constantly. So it was a really great conversation we had, and a continuous conversation that we have with the Canadian Mental Health Association of Hamilton to really see what those priorities are. And this year, going back to youth and mental health, we were able to have that conversation at our roundtable conversation with youth leaders and youth as well, as we continue to share stories about what that impact looked like. Amazing. So that does kind of lead us to the end of the priorities. Feel free to continuously put that out there, but we wanted to open up the floors for any other questions or any other comments that you had, so that we can make sure that we are really trying to connect with you all regarding what the next steps are and what you would like to see us work on as we continue to dive deeper into this data that we have coming through, whether if it's through the census, the 2021 census, or the Employer One survey. These are ongoing conversations, but we really rely on the community to give us these priorities so that we can continuously grab information. So one of the examples that I wanted to give you all was, the work that's being done within hiring immigrants and newcomers in our city. So one of the priorities last year really focused on that, and we continue having these conversations with HIPSI, so the Hamilton Immigration Partnership Council, and we are part of that council now to continuously see what the needs are. And as we continue to have these ongoing conversations about, how to better train individuals to hire and have better hiring practices, that's something that we do with Challenge 2025. So, as we release these EDI trainings throughout, that's going to be released hopefully in March of 2023. We wanted to get employers to be a part of the conversation on how to better equip them on hiring practices, and then having another conversation about how to better retain employees into the labor market as well. So it's an ongoing conversation, but I want to open it up as we do have about 10 minutes left to just really see what other priorities are, or what you posted onto that priority list and why you posted it there. So feel free to share your thoughts as we come to a closing on this year's local labor market plan consultations.
I'll just jump in quickly and say that the link that we did share, we will re-email it to everybody in case you stew on some thoughts and get some new ideas. You can also share it with any maybe employers that who have a passion to contribute to the community, or some colleagues who weren't able to attend. The link is live for a week, so people will be able to contribute until next Thursday, and then we'll be able to do our work from there. So I just wanted to add that, and I wanted to make sure that we circled back to Anna if she's still here. So she knows that we didn't ignore her.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. No, it was just a kind of like an aside. So that's why I wasn't pressing to get this answered. But because the cost of living is, I'm assuming, a little bit lower in Hamilton than it is in Toronto, I'm surprised that there's not like a drain of people like kind of migrating to Hamilton. So it's weird that there would be some of these like deficits, which I understand are like probably like province-wide, if not countrywide. But I imagine there should be more people going towards Hamilton just because inflation, money's tight, everything that was discussed before. Right. So maybe is the city of Hamilton doing more to attract people to Hamilton to like get it out there? So that's maybe a priority. I don't know.
Absolutely.
Interesting. I know we attended a conference yesterday, and there was a large focus on bringing newcomers and immigrants to kind of develop a workforce. But it goes back to the whole housing situation then. Like, yes, they'll be employed, but are they employed enough to find somewhere to live that people who live here now cannot afford to live in? So it's a very vicious cycle.
It's just to kind of like piggy off of that. Another thing that was brought up during the conference was in terms of like housing, that housing or rent should be at least 30% or less of your total income, which is kind of insane if you think about it now and think about housing prices now compared to a few years ago. So yeah.
So one thing that I just wanted to mention as we kind of come to a closing is that we do have a survey for participants here. I'm not sure if it was already posted in the chat already, but we always want this opportunity to kind of hear about what your thoughts were as a whole, not looking at the priorities, but just as a whole for these conversations as we continue to have these webinars. So we wanted to throw that in the chat for you all as you continue to kind of trickle out of this room here today, and just making sure that you're sharing your thoughts and giving us your feedback as a whole. And then going back to the conversation about priorities and the conversation we actually had yesterday at the Warden Caucus. So that was the Growing Your Workforce Conference that was led by some of our other local board members. I think Dana might be still in the room. I know that she had a hand in kind of developing that as well, but it's an ongoing conversation that we have. And I think one of the focus that I really enjoyed yesterday was the youth focus and, what were some of the priorities and how to continuously engage with youth. And as we have these conversations about co-ops and having these conversations about their interests and needs, I think this is something that we continuously build. So with that being said, I wanted to also kind of put a shameless plug in here. With Jesse, I think he put it in the direct message instead, but he just wanted to thank everybody for the ongoing conversation and to follow Hamont Youth on Instagram if you do have any needs for youth needs as well. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there while we were here because you directly. But yeah.
Sarah just posted in the chat as well. Sarah, if you're still here, if you want to share a little bit about the support you want to provide to employers. There you are.
Hi. Yeah, just a super quick note that, this is the whole skills upgrading priority was really, really interesting to me when you went through the labor market information. And this obviously, continues to be something that we're looking at, and how can we further support, employers or those working with employers around this issue, in connection, of course, to the things you were talking about, Khadija, retention, and just the ever-changing skill requirements of workplaces, the increase in digital technology, and what's coming in the future. So just a note that we're thinking about that, and we're hoping to, partner with some employers this fiscal year. So if that's of interest, or you have someone that you're working with that might be interested, just to get them connected.
Amazing. Thank you, Sarah. Yes, feel free to reach out to Sarah if you are interested in upgrading those skills. I know that that's going to be an amazing program that will really help employers with the literacy needs as well. So definitely feel free to reach out to us or Sarah regarding that as well. And then on that note, I think we're good to wrap up at this point. I think, does anybody have any last minute thoughts or questions for us? This is a really great opportunity to drop any questions regarding the labor market, what we're currently seeing as trends, or wanting to share what your priorities were as a whole. I'm going to take that as a no. So with that being
said, very
silent
no.
It was a very, very great no in a sense right there. But so once again, this is some of the things that we are very excited to see as we progress into 2023. So some of the things that we are working on moving into January is going to be the release of our 2023 Employer One survey. Also have the apprenticeship toolkit, which will be released, and we would love to hear from you all regarding that. So we'll be sure to send out that marketing as we continuously have these ongoing conversations with you all about what the seamlessness is regarding apprenticeships and how to involve people into that conversation and getting them into apprenticeships and realizing that there is a great career pathway within the skilled trades in itself. And then course, with all your priorities being listed here, we are going to be releasing our local labor market plan of 2023, and that's going to be released towards the ending of February, early March, so that have you all take a look at it and really get a better detailed understanding of what this year of 2022 really had encompassed when it comes to the labor market. So feel free to visit our website regarding that, our social medias, give us a follow on Workforce Planning Hamilton or Hamilton Youth Workforce. We are on LinkedIn, so give us a follow there as well. And as we continue to see the needs and the priorities that you've been able to list today, we will be sharing it back with you all. So feel free to reach out to us at info@Workforce Planning Hamilton if you do have any labor market needs, or just feel free to, I think at this point, you all have one of our emails. So feel free to email us if you do have any questions in the meantime. But we just wanted to thank you all for your participation, your ongoing participation with any of these conversations that we've been able to have this year. And we wanted to just make sure that we thank you all. And we hope that you have an amazing day. The fog is no longer there from what I'm seeing. So within this 4 minutes of time, feel free to go outside, take a look at the less foggy day that we have, and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your participation.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Have an amazing day, everyone.